Right, welcome to this special edition. We are here to cover the events or today's incident, and so we're covering here the inauguration of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to various housing projects in Badr city, northeast of the capital. Today, the president has made the inauguration this morning, and the inauguration was attended by Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Minister of Defense Mohammed Zaki, Minister of Housing Asim al-Ghazali, in addition to a number of state officials and top army commanders. The president said that the goal of the national projects that are implemented by the state is improving the living conditions of citizens. He added that the current situation in Egypt states needs exerting all efforts for transferring the country into a state for a brighter future. The president expressed his keenness to solve the problems in all sectors, including the roads, ports, airports, sewage, drainage, and sewage systems, to change the lives of citizens from no state to a real state. Or rather, we are to prepare for the new republic that was announced a few days ago during the inauguration of this or the most important project, Hayya Karima. We have over the phone to highlight the inaugurations and the developmental projects that are taking place. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. And we're speaking here about the inauguration of various housing projects in Badr city. This is part of the inauguration that are taking place almost every week. So you're reading to today's inauguration, to such projects in Badr city and the several inaugurations that took place during the past period.
As a citizen, Egyptian citizen, I feel satisfied for the inauguration of such projects. I remind you that any time we leave Maspero building, we're looking to people who are living in a miserable situation. Now we have huge new buildings, and we shall have the chance to live their lives everywhere, whether in Cairo or in the countryside. This is, I think, our duty to make development and to make this development fair for everybody. I will not recognize or consider we are developing unless I see that this will be translated into sandwiches for the poor people, good housing, good education, good services, whatever. So really, I am so happy to see this, because this is some of our duties, either as citizens, either from the background of our religion, and so on. So thank God and thanks to our leadership who is really taking care of all these projects for the sake of the huge number of Egyptians who are not living the appropriate way of living.
Ambassador Bayoumi, during the inauguration, the president gave some of the remarks, and throughout those remarks, he sent a number of messages to the citizen, messages to the business community and investors, and business to the world. Three messages, or three kind of messages, were sent. You're reading to the messages, the different messages to the population, to the investors, and to the world.
Let us start by to the world. Egypt decided, because of its history and its geography, to be a sort of an open country, open economy to everybody. This started since Muhammad Ali Pasha, even before, when the Egyptians took their boats alongside of the western side of the African continent and the eastern side of the African continent. Then Muhammad Ali Pasha and the discoveries of the Upper River Nile places. Then Gamal Abdel Nasser, I repeat, Gamal Abdel Nasser, who decided that Egypt should join the international, international trade organization. This is very important, and we are following this with all pride. Now, the message that we have free trade areas with open economy, with the Arab world, with Africa, and with Europe, with Turkey, with some parts with our trade with the United States. So let us continue this, because this is very important for us, for our young generation also. That will make the possibility of our development much more available. The message to Egyptians that if you are producing now for a market of 100 million inhabitants, this is not enough, because those markets which we are open to are more than 2,000 million inhabitants. We need more production. I know that one of our producers for T-shirts, for instance, he went to Europe to find ways and means to export. They asked him to have 100,000 dozen of T-shirts weekly. We don't produce this. So we have to enlarge our volume of production in order to cover all these markets. We opened the markets, now we need the production. Production means more jobs for our young generation who is seeking better life and who is seeking work in an appropriate way. For the region, we are after all Arabs, Africans, and belongs to the Mediterranean culture. This is very important to our partners to know that we are keen to make Egypt much bigger and developed for the sake of development for us and for our regional partners also.
One important message that could be sent, since we're speaking to messages to the whole world, one other important message is the circumstances or the what surround us in the region, and despite all this, Egypt is continuing on with its developmental projects. One of the issues that Egypt, despite the global pandemic, despite the challenges or the challenging atmosphere that surrounds Egypt, Egypt is continuing on with its developmental process. This, of course, comes at a time when we're ranking institutions worldwide are putting Egypt from negative to stable territory. So how do you view that from your point of view?
This proves two things. First, that we are hard workers, that we are doing our homework, we are doing our job, comme il faut. But on the other side, we are lucky. I must say that thank God that we are a lucky people. We started our economic reform early enough before the epidemic. That's why when the disease came, we were already standing on a very stable foot. This is the lesson we are trying to share it with our partners. Egypt, according to the reports coming from the International Monetary Organization, Egypt is standing in a positive way, that our GDP is growing positively. We are one of very rare countries growing positively. The whole economy of the world, even in the big economies, is growing negatively. So this is a very important lesson, but also it is a lesson for us. To double our efforts, we shouldn't sleep. We should continue working the 24 hours in order to make this available for every Egyptian. I hope every Egyptian, this will be noticed by our young generation, so proud to share efforts to develop our economy. And also the services for the people who cannot cover the services of health, of education, of transport, of any service we are developing now. We are, in my opinion, we are working on many fronts, in many dimensions, and we do not ignore any sort of development. We talk about agriculture, industry, services, housing, education, health, everything you can imagine. And I'm talking to you while really I was enjoying in the last few days driving on the road of the north coast of Egypt. This is a miracle, and I'm driving a car with license and with numbers coming from a cooperation between Egypt and its main economic partner, the European Union. This system is German. We asked also France and Italy to help us in the railway system. We are helped by many of the partners along the world. Why? Because we are the best user of any economic cooperation. I heard many foreign ministers talking to us saying that we are jealous that you are not taking enough. Take enough of our help, of our cooperation. So they see that whenever they help Egypt, they see good results. And this is something really, as an old diplomat, I'm proud of.
Another important message the President gave here was to the business community when he said that the projects that are carried out by the state do not aim to compete with the private sector, but rather an attempt to create a balance between what is required at the state level and what is being proposed. What does this message exactly mean, and how does it reflect on the receiver or the receptor of such messages, particularly from the business community?
This is very important, and I wrote many articles about that. We need, as a community, as Egyptians, to make what I call a common understanding and national consensus. Are we a country which would take example of state-led economy or a market-oriented economy? And in my opinion, we should do, the government is doing much more than is required from a government, but here the private sector is invited to come and to participate in investment, even small, very small investment. But here we must give the message to the private sector that they are in safe, because you would share me that the private sector is a little bit aware of some people writing against the private sector. Some people are against richness. Some people are not happy that some people are rich. No country in the world can live without rich people and poor people, and both of them can cooperate. China, the communist country, they have 130 million Chinese with an average GDP for a person of $30 million annually. And they have the same time, the same number, 130 million inhabitants under the poverty line. So, and we have to make quite sure that every individual Egyptian is requested to come and to participate. But those who are voting for a communist country in the time where communism has finished, even in Russia and China, we shouldn't allow them to continue like that. The private sector is invited to participate, the government is doing its job, and all of us will try to come to what we said, national consensus about the way we are going to manage our economy.
Mm-hmm. Here, also the Prime Minister has addressed those inauguration, or he gave a speech and spoke about the state's ability or inability during the past decades to tackle several important files that were seen as very important or crucial. And we're speaking here about infrastructure, we're speaking about roads, so we're speaking about highways, we're speaking about power, energy, we're speaking about drainage system and sewage system and all the other services and utilities. And here the Prime Minister also spoke about one important issue that hindered the achievement or what we aspire for, which is overpopulation. How far is the state now trying to deal with files that were not really handled in the best way during the past decades, and how far is the issue of overpopulation is a kind of hindering to such developmental plans?
I'm afraid to confess that this is one of the most serious problems facing the Egyptian economy. I want to remind you that during the time of Muhammad Ali Pasha, we were 5 million and Cairo was 1 million. Exactly like Norway. Norway was 5 million and Oslo was 1 million. Still Norway is 5 million and Oslo is 1 million. Here we are 105 million. This is not acceptable. We are producing children much more than we are producing food for them. And the last figure is that since the revolution of 2011, we have produced a country of, in its number, it is double of a country in the size of Greece. Greece is 10 million. We have produced 22 million children in the last 20 years. This is not really acceptable, but the way to deal with this matter is to take it by convincing people that it's not for their sake. We cannot use the Chinese experience by punishing the third child or something like that. But we have to talk about this. I think that the mass media left this subject since decades. You remember 20 years ago that we were always talking about 2 children, 2 children, 2 children. And the problem that those of the needy classes, they are producing more children than those who are in a position where they can treat their children much better. So I here really support what our Prime Minister is saying, that we have to tackle this problem, but by convincing, by education in the schools, by mass media to talk about it. And I hope in 20 years to come that we slow down the birth rate in Egypt in order not to eat what we are producing. The birth rate is diminishing the growth rate tremendously. We have to treat this seriously and to talk about it seriously, and I'm glad that at the level of the Prime Minister, we are talking about this problem.
Right. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for being with us and for your input here. And here, the President has said that unplanned population growth hinders the state's development strategy and that the expansion in the construction of unsafe housing has been destroying the country since 2011. These were the remarks of the President. The President said that the goal of the national project that are implemented by the state is improving the living conditions of the citizens. The head of state said that the current situation in the Egyptian state needs exerting all efforts for transferring the country into a state for a brighter future. He expressed his keenness to solve the problems of all sectors. President Sisi stated that the project carried out by the Ministry of Housing does not aim to compete with the private sector, but rather an attempt to create a balance between what is required at the state level and what is being proposed. President Sisi also confirmed that the state intends to offer the new administrative capital company on the stock exchange as soon as possible, expecting that its assets will exceed 3 to 4 trillion pounds within 2 years. The president said that the state bears a huge cost to provide alternative housing to Egyptians, noting that the subsidy over 10 years costs the state up to 3 trillion pounds or around 275 billion pounds annually, and added that the project of developing the Egyptian countryside needs 1/3 of the value of subsidy in 10 years. Right, before we continue on with our discussion, let's have a very quick break and we'll come back for more discussion.
بعلم الوصول قلنا وكتبنا عهدنا هنعيش كلنا.
وأنني أعلن اليوم انطلاق هذا المشروع الطموح، تنمية الريف المصري حياة كريمة.
مصر في وقت الشدة قادرة تحضن ولادها وتعيد المشاهد. بعلم الوصول احنا في خدمة أهلنا ولاد الأصول. بعلم الوصول احنا في خدمة أهلنا ولاد الأصول.
مستعينا على تنفيذه بالله وبثقتي في قدرات المصريين دولة وشعبا، فإنني أعتبره تدشينا للجمهورية الجديدة.
مصر دايما لما تنوي قادرة تعمل معجزات في التاريخ، دور تلاقي عنها مكتوبة حكايات بالعزيمة والإرادة كل يوم في إنجازات. الحكاية في مصر فكر قالها نبني وقال نعمر قلب عون الله هنقدر عمره ما يقول استحالة. قام وسمى الله أكبر خلى لون الأرض أخضر جنة سبحان اللي صور بص شوف بعينك تعالى.
Right, welcome back, and continuing on with our discussion, we have with us over the phone Dr. Ibrahim Mustafa, economic expert. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Hi.
I'm fine, thank you so much. And we're still speaking about the inaugurations that took place today, the projects in Badr city, in northeast of the capital, and much of the developmental projects that have been inaugurated recently. We have seen last week the announcement of, or the official announcement of Hayat Karima, and today is part of the overall projects, developmental projects. Tell me your reading to the inauguration of those developmental projects and how it raised the living standard of people. Tell me how the government is exerting its effort in order to carry out with files that were not tackled during the past decades.
Let me first explain how important this project is to the Egyptian people. As you said, it's very important to leverage the living standards of the Egyptian people, committing that the Egyptian government is insisting to continue its big reforms that have been adopted since 2016, and to ensure that the Egyptian government is taking care of the Egyptian people by establishing several projects, mainly in the housing sector, to make these housing units available to the Egyptian people, that they can benefit from the fruits of the road that the Egyptian government has been working on. In addition, this is a very positive signal that although the COVID-19 impact, negative impact that the Egyptian government has been working on to enhance, the government is working on continuing the projects that, in several sectors, that we said, Hayat Karima and other projects, to enhance the Egyptian life, the life of the Egyptian people, and to enhance all, fields of life, whether in the housing sectors, health sector, education sector, in addition to the other projects that leading the Egyptian economy, like the mega projects of the like Alamein and the new Azim capital and other projects like these. These projects reflect, how the Egyptian government is performing very well during the last 5 years, that have been accredited by several institutions locally, regionally, and internationally, raising the awareness for whether local investors, regional investors, that Egypt is working very well on the economic side as well as the social side of the Egyptian people lives.
Right. Here we're speaking about housing projects, and we have seen the housing project, housing projects in Bedr City, but that is part of the housing projects that were taking place all over or across the country. Here the President said that this is really a kind of huge, or it bears the state a huge cost, up to 3 trillion pounds in 10 years, or around 275 billion pounds annually. How far is the state or the leadership, because as we have seen, the President is following up with those projects himself and is inaugurating those projects himself. So how keen the country is proceeding on with such projects, and how significant those housing projects are important for the Egyptian citizens?
I would like to extend this point from two sides. On one side, that Egypt was witnessing in the past a big gap in the C and D class housing units. That's why the Egyptian government, when President Sisi came to the power, he had a vision regarding to develop the country from different fields. One of these fields is the housing. That's why when you see the housing, building many housing units across the country, in Alexandria, Badr, and other areas. This is, to make these units available to the Egyptian people, and his efficiency and his following up approach to follow up all the projects under the ground is very important. That reflects the the President of Egypt is taking care of all things regarding the housing sector, mainly that affect the poor and the limited income people in Egypt. And this reflects, a very, long-term vision regarding how to develop the country, focusing on the living standards from one side and making these units available to the Egyptian people. And he introduced, to the Egyptian people, the initiative that under the 3%, interest rate to get, these units available to all limited and the poor people, how to benefit from this initiative, and get these units. In addition to that, developing the new Azim capital needs to develop the areas around to make units available to the people are moving to the new Azim capital. And I see all these things are very important, from different sides, whether to the Egyptian people from one side and to the country, from the whole perspective. So this is very important when he's now following up all these projects I see it's very important, and this reflects to the, whole, to the Egyptian people and to the world that the Egyptian government is working very hard to make the living standards of people to the best standards.
At the very beginning of his remarks, President Sisi said that unplanned population growth hinders the state development strategy. The Prime Minister reiterated the same words here of the President during his remarks, saying that overpopulation is considered a big challenge looming ahead in Egypt for the past century, whole century. But he pointed out that the state has adopted a strategy for handling the overpopulation issue. He spoke about doubling the establishment of housing units in Egypt compared to the past 40 years. How far is that a step to try to contain this this very, very critical issue, which is the overpopulation here? And what measures is the state taking in order to try to find a solution to such a problem?
Yeah, it's a very, very big problem to the economic growth in general. Not only, to the housing sector, because the increase rate of the population in Egypt now is around 2.5, which is very high. This means a growth rate that's not less than 8%. In this sort of circumstance that Egypt has been witnessing since 2011, Egypt really has been facing many challenges. To rebalance the economy first, then to rethink about how to solve the population increase by introducing very well service to the people, and from one side, and building more units to absorb this high increase percentage. I see this a very good vision about how we look at this issue from different sides regarding the service from one side and the housing sector from the other side, trying to raise the awareness about this problem by encouraging people to take care of how many children they should have, and this is very important to take care of these of their children, and by it needs from more than to take care about their children. The number of their children should be in the range of 2, maximum 3 people, not exceeding this, because this will eat the growth fruits. If we didn't look very well to this problem from different sides, from the government side and from people's side, and to increase the awareness about how people should take care of this problem, this will be very important to increase the awareness, to take care of the education side, giving more awareness sessions to the kids from the beginning, that it's very important to take care of their life, standard of living. All these things should be addressed very well very well.
Right. If I may ask you here about the country's developmental projects at large. And just last week, we have seen the President inaugurating officially the Haya Karima, or the Decent Life initiative, that is seen as one of the biggest projects that were carried out maybe in the history of Egypt. If I may ask you about such a huge project and how the country is trying to upgrade the living standard of citizens and link the rural areas or the villages with the cities, and how important and crucial are those projects for the country, for the citizens, and how it is reflected, or how does it give an outlook to Egypt?
Look, I touched this on the ground, by the way, since 2019. I was traveling across the Upper Egypt governorate, and I touched this very well. I mean, on the ground. When I saw, I mean, people working in the local authorities are trying to survey what are the needs of the limited income people and the poor villages, from what are the services they need. I mean, to cover what are the utilities that you want to establish. I saw this on the ground. Actually, I saw how focused was the people. I mean, on the ground to help the local authorities to try to put the right priorities that poor villages and the poor people need on the ground, and trying to put the project and the utilities projects on the ground by having by selecting the right location of each project of these utilities projects to help several villages around, making all these villages benefiting from these projects. And I saw another kind of cooperation between people and the local authorities. I saw several villages were trying to cooperate with the local authorities to share the cost with the local authorities by, gathering money about 50% of the cost of the projects. I saw many initiatives on the ground. I saw the government is working very well on the ground by establishing these utilities projects to help and enhance the living standards of people on the ground in the needy villages that around the Upper Egypt governorates and other poor areas. Which, I touched this from people that they are very happy with having such projects on the ground, and I saw them that was very, very cooperative, even to help the government put the right priorities to them, actually, from the other side.
Right. Mr. Ibrahim Mustafa, economic expert, thank you so much for being with us and for your input here. And I guess that brings us to the end of this edition. We'll be updating you throughout the day of more of this tour the President is carrying out and the inauguration project he is carrying out with. Many thanks for watching.